we are going to now transition to our keynote. From the Governor's Office of Planning and Housing, Build Here and Build More. So this is a session where we have the opportunity to hear about what the governor is doing, what the state is doing to shape our housing and development landscape. We're going to talk about the housing strategic plan, the governor's second term strategic plan, Built Here, and the launch of the Utah Project Portal, which is a new tool designed to enhance collaboration and streamline the development process. So we are excited that Laura Hanson, who is the Senior Advisor for Long Range Planning for Governor Cox, is here with us to present.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. I'm Laura Hanson, member of APA. I have been a member of APA for a long, long time, and you are my people. So it's nice to be here with you all at this conference. So I am going to talk about a handful of things that we're doing at the governor's office in terms of planning. So some of you may remember way back in the day, we had the governor's office of planning and budget. And then it was changed to the Governor's Office of Management and Budget, and now we're back to planning and budget. And so it's been kind of a nice gap of time since we had the P in GOPB. And so I'm sort of reinventing the role a little bit and trying to, take advantage of the platform and try to move us forward in a positive way. So that's really kind of my focus, and I'm trying to be an advocate for planners and be an advocate for our communities in this role and help elevate those conversations in our state policy discussions. So I'm going to talk about three different things here today. One is Built Here. This is the governor's second term strategic plan. I'm going to talk about a statewide planning coordination strategy that we are just launching, and then we will talk about the state housing plan, which I know is top of mind for a lot of folks. So Built Here first. This is the governor's second term strategic plan, and he chose this term Built Here to embody kind of a philosophy of abundance. We don't need to have a scarcity mindset. We can have affordable housing and quality communities. We can have good energy production in our state and a clean environment. And so he really likes this idea of abundance and thinking that we have lots of opportunities within our state. The Built Here phrase also really has been coined to champion all of the wonderful people and communities that we have in the state of Utah. We are innovators, we're creators, we're builders, we're architects. And this kind of goes to his philosophy of making sure that we have fewer people who are tearing our systems down and tearing our communities down and tearing our government down, and more people who are building. And so it's a very positive mindset. The QR code is a link to download the Built Here document, so feel free to scan that. You can also find it on governor.utah.gov, and then you'll see initiatives at the top of the page, and that will take you through it. But I want to highlight just a handful of things that are in this that feel like they might be of interest to you all as planners. So the document is organized around three sort of key themes: people, place, and prosperity. And so there's a high-level goal for each of those. The goal for people is a future of health and opportunity for every single Utahn. And we had a whole committee that worked together to craft this plan, the goals, and then the specific objectives and metrics for each of these items. So within each section, there's a whole list of objectives, and then there is a lead metric, which is, something we're going to count and measure. There will be a dashboard that will be available on the governor's website, so you can actually see our progress towards all of these things. This is not the entire people list, but I just pulled out a couple of things that I thought might be relevant to planners. And big shout out to my colleagues, Isla here, for helping me with this. The first objective is improving access to high-quality, affordable health care, prioritizing safe and stable housing for all Utahns, and improving transition services to reduce homelessness. And you can see some of the metrics there that we'll be tracking. The number of counties in a with a primary care professional shortage. So we're trying to drop that. We're hoping that families have access to safe housing if they're experiencing domestic violence, and reducing the number of individuals in custody or government services who enter homelessness upon release. So these are a couple of these are not the only metrics that matter in each of these areas, but these are a leading metric that we've chosen as a state to track. In the place section, the goal is neighborhoods and communities where the American dream can thrive. And you can see we have a handful of objectives here: increase housing affordability and ownership rates at all income levels, achieve better safety outcomes, preserve infrastructure and mobility, develop resilience in Utah's water systems, and expand and increase access to outdoor recreation. The metrics there, some of these will look familiar. 150 new housing units built or underway, including 35,000 new starter homes. Improving the state's transportation safety index by 10%. 90% of cities in the state have adopted water-wise efficiency standards for new construction. And then increasing the number of Utah residents within a 10-minute walking distance of a recreational opportunity. These are all things that the executive branch will be working on actively in advancing over the next 4 years. And the last section is prosperity. The goal here is an economy that celebrates entrepreneurs, rural Utah, education, and the spirit of service. And a couple of the key objectives there: strengthen Utah's position as a premier global leader for innovation and entrepreneurship, intensify economic diversification in rural Utah by advancing transformative infrastructure projects. And you can see the lead metrics there. So I won't go into any more detail on this, but just know this is available online. There are many more objectives and metrics that we'll be tracking. You can follow along. We want Utahns to be able to see our progress, and hope that by the end of the governor's second term, which will be his last, that we've made some lasting impacts for the state of Utah. So now I want to talk about something I've been working on. So I mentioned GOPB became GOMB. Now we're back to P. We've been kind of inventing what that means. And one of the things that we've been working on is this statewide planning coordination strategy. So you all may remember at previous APA conferences, we talked a lot about a survey that we called Guiding Our Growth. This was a statewide outreach and education initiative about growth. We asked Utahns, what do you care about in your communities and that you hope never changes as we grow? What worries you about growth that we need to make sure we mitigate for? And what do you want to see for the future of your communities? And we had a ton of people participate in this. Many partners in this room and others contributed to this effort. As a summary of what we heard during that, we heard that Utahns wanted a variety of housing types and price points. They wanted proactive water conservation and shared responsibility. So that shared responsibility was cities and farms, new development and existing development. We're all in this together on water conservation. Utahns wanted the ability to get around by a multitude of modes for transportation, not just cars, a balance. And interestingly, public transit just came up over and over across the state, even in the very rural parts of the state. Everyone wanted to see more public transportation. And Utahns also really value our recreational opportunities and the open space that we have here in the state. That's part of what makes Utah beautiful. So people wanted to preserve open space within and around their communities. So we have all of these goals. We know what Utahns want. Now the question is how, as planners in the state, and how can we at the executive branch help move us towards this? Well, we have a whole bunch of planning efforts that are underway at the state. We've been compiling a list, and there are over 24 different planning efforts, long-range planning efforts happening that are being led by state agencies or state partners. They touch a whole variety of topics: housing, energy, water, transportation, air quality. Even if the plan doesn't directly speak to multiple topic areas, the decisions in one area affect those of another. As we're planning our transportation system, that has an impact on our air quality. As we're planning our water systems, that has a direct connection to our energy production and to the way that we choose to landscape and plan out our development patterns. So there's lots of opportunities here. Every single one of these plans is an opportunity for us to advance what the public told us in guiding our growth. So our goal here is really statewide alignment, bringing all of those things together. I have been taking this same idea of guiding our growth. You know, growth is just happening. We're an exceptional place to live. As long as Utah remains an exceptional place to live, people are going to continue to grow here, and our families are going to want to stay here. Growth just is. We can make sure that it delivers positive things for our communities, or we can make sure that it, or we can let it just do its thing and we can get some negative outcomes. So we want to be really intentional about this. But there are plans happening at the state level. There's plans happening at the local level, at the regional level, at the neighborhood level. There's the inland port. There's, the Utah Transit Authority. There's MIDA. There's all of these various different groups that are developing plans. My hope here is that we're all rowing in the same direction, and all of these things are aligned. And so that's where this coordination strategy comes into play. So we've come up with a 6-part strategy that includes a handful of things: guidance for successful plans, a state plan library, and you can see there, I'll walk through each of these very briefly, and I will send you a link on where you can find more information about each of these as well. So the first, guidance for successful plans. So one of the first things that we did when we created GOPB again was ask every state agency to develop an organizational strategic plan. Huge shout out to my colleague Tara for help with both of these documents that you see here. But an organizational strategic plan is like the very best version of DNR, right? It's their statutory requirements, their employee development, their customer service. So that's the blue document. The white document is policy area strategic plans. So they're developing plans for recreation and for water and for energy. These are best practice documents that are intended to guide state agencies, but they're broadly applicable and tips and best practices that you all could use in your communities as well. So I encourage you to download those and take a look at them. But to help make sure that we have our most successful plans. They're durable, they're resistant to challenge. They include broad consensus and buy-in and lots of stakeholders in their development. The next thing we put together is a state plan library. I did not realize how many plans that had been produced by various different state agencies. And so we've compiled all of them in a single location. It's searchable by agency and by topic. So you could say, I'm curious about all of the transportation plans, or I want to see all the plans developed by the Department of Agriculture and Food. So you can navigate through those. You can also see a list of all of the in-process planning projects that are happening at the state. Again, all of this will be available online, and I'll share a link to it so you can find that. We've also created some funding resources, right? Plans are wonderful, but if they just sit on a shelf and you don't do anything with it, there's not a whole lot of value to them. So we want the plans to be implemented. So we've created a few different opportunities. One is a funding opportunities portal. This is a place where you can find every single grant, loan, technical assistance program that is offered by the state of Utah. You can filter by eligibility. So you can say, I'm a local government, or I'm a private sector partner, or I'm a nonprofit. You can filter by topic. I'm interested in economic development grants, or I'm interested in recreation grants. And so you can find all of those things there. We also have a specific section on water infrastructure funding, because we know that that's a huge need for Utah communities, and so you can find a lot of that information there. And then we have a lot of grant writing resources and tips as well. We're also working on compiling some data resources for you all. All of the Guiding Our Growth survey data is available online. It can be drilled down. You can see region-specific data. So if you're in Weber County, for example, you can say, well, I want to see the responses from Weber County, or I want to see the responses from southeastern Utah. You can drill down and see how people responded. The Utah Project Portal is something that I've been working on with the R6 Regional Council. formerly known as the 6-county AOG, and this is something that we are taking statewide, and every AOG is participating, but it will be a place where all of the projects that local governments anticipate needing state funding for will be entered into this this database, and you can pull it up and see by a map, you know, that this community has this sort of water project and this community has this roadway project, to help kind of make all of our needs visible so that state leaders, as they're making appropriations and funding decisions, can see how much need there is in each of these different areas. We've also are standing up a GIS advisory committee. This has been a longstanding committee that is getting going again. And will help work on developing some statewide data standards so that we have better data available to state agencies, but also to all of you as you're doing your planning work. And then there's a whole bunch of additional resources through links there. I'm really excited about this, and you are the first to hear, so I'm asking you all to kind of keep this a little bit under wraps for just a couple of weeks, but the governor will be announcing an executive order in a couple of weeks that is creating a new long-range planning coordinating council. Some of you may remember the Quality Growth Commission from back in the day. It kind of evolved over time and sort of its focus changed. Well, we're coming back to something like that. So this is sort of going back to the Leavitt administration. And the members, it will be comprised of cabinet-level decision makers from the agencies that you see here. We're also inviting a lot of community partners to be a member of this group as well. We will meet quarterly. We'll discuss in-process plans that are happening, provide recommendations on those, endorse those, and produce an annual report to the governor and legislature on the state of planning in Utah. That will highlight key risk areas, opportunities, but the idea here is really to align things so that if the Department of Health, for example, is working on a master plan for aging, they have an opportunity to talk to the Department of Transportation and the Department of, or the Division of Outdoor Recreation to talk about how our transportation system and our recreation system and our housing can all help contribute to preparing for an aging population. And there's a million, if you draw lines between all of these different topic areas, you'd have a giant web. And so this is an opportunity for us to really elevate the work that's happening, make sure that we're communicating with one another across policy topic areas. So I'm very excited about this. It will be getting going in just a couple of weeks. We'll be announcing that. We also have really prioritized technical assistance to local governments. And you can see here we have 6 different programs right now that provide technical assistance to local governments to help you all with your planning work. We have 4 positions that are embedded within each AOG to assist with planning work, with asset management work, with city administration efforts, with CDBG funding. We have, through the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, we have outreach managers that are assigned to each region to help the regions with their economic development goals. And we have the Office of the Property Rights Ombudsman, which does a lot of great training. Shout out to Marcy and Rob in the corner over there. They provide a great resource to all of you. And Jordan, I see walking in as well. Hi, Jordan. So great resources. Make sure you take advantage of all of these. We are really trying, it's hard for the state to be able to get out to every single municipality. So we're really trying to elevate the AOGs as that resource in between and to build up their capacity to support you all better with the needs that you have. Okay, so I mentioned all of that stuff was available online. This is a link that will take you to the funding opportunity library, the state plan library, those guidance documents, and more information about the coordinating council will be posted on there as well as it comes online. Again, the idea here is to make sure we're all rowing together in the same direction as a state, that the state plans are supporting and advancing your local goals, that you all, as you're developing your local plans, have an idea of where the state is headed, and that we're all aligned and working towards those goals that Utahns shared with us through Guiding Our Growth. Okay, housing. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the process of what we're doing for our housing master plan and how you all can get engaged. But first, I have a little video from the governor that he wanted to share with you that is plugging a new resource about housing, and I will tell you more about that in just a minute.
Hi, I'm Governor Spencer Cox. As governor, one of my #1 priorities is ensuring there is sufficient housing for all Utah residents. Across neighborhoods and income levels, families are feeling the pressure of rising costs, limited options, and the challenge of finding a home that fits both their needs and their budget. Decades ago, development in our state included a wide mix of housing types, including duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, courtyard apartments, cottage clusters, and other small-scale multifamily homes that fit naturally into traditional single-family residential areas. These designs offer more options for young professionals, growing families, older adults looking to downsize, and everyone in between. This kind of housing fills the gap between single-family homes and large apartment buildings, often referred to as the missing middle. Today, I'm proud to introduce the state's first Missing Middle Housing Toolkit, a resource collaboratively designed by staff from state, regional, and local agencies to help local communities bridge the gap in housing supply by supporting the growth of diverse, attainable, and neighborhood-friendly housing options. The Missing Middle Housing Toolkit provides a clear roadmap for residents, planners, developers, elected officials, and local agency staff to understand how we can reintroduce and enhance these housing types in a thoughtful, equitable, and local community-led way. We know that no single solution will solve our housing challenges. And this toolkit is one piece of a broader strategy that includes affordability, sustainability, and community voices at the center. It's about making room, literally and figuratively, for Utahns to live, work, and raise a family in our great state. I invite you to use this tool, provide feedback on its functionality, and help us continually improve it as a resource to support your planning and development efforts. Together, we can ensure that missing middle no longer means missing opportunities. Thank you.
All right, so we have this great new toolkit. This is produced by the Office of the Property Rights Ombudsman, the Wasatch Front Regional Council, and the Mountain Land Association of Governments. There will be a presentation about this tomorrow morning at 9:15. It will be in the Willow Room, so make sure that you attend that. And there is a link here to the draft toolkit. We encourage you guys to explore and play around with that. So make sure you attend that session tomorrow morning. It's a really neat tool. We're super excited about it. Steve, come on up, Steve. Yeah, come on up. I'm glad you're okay. I was getting worried about you, buddy.
Never fear. Thank you. And as you can see, Laura is the consummate planner. She's brilliant and tremendously organized and is doing amazing work within the state to create the opportunities that we really need to have in order to meet the needs of our state. And let me just start out by asking a quick question. Who here knows someone who is living in suboptimal conditions, i.e. in their parents' basement, in your basement, in a shared living arrangement, and they're wishing so badly that they could be in another situation? Pretty much everybody, I think, knows somebody in that space right now. And this is the really interesting thing about housing. Housing issues used to be a low-income problem. Our structures were designed around helping the people at the very bottom of the socioeconomic spectrum, right? We have homelessness up to low income, very low income. And then we had all this subsidized housing that was designed for people that were making, 50, 60% of the area median income. And that's all that we needed to do as government, because the market took care of the rest. And that was, it's been that way for 80, 90, 100 years, 120 years, however long. And I'm just going to show you today why things are different now, and they're going to be different going forward, and that requires us all to think differently about housing and deal with it in a way that is different than we've ever had to deal with it before on the sort of the moderate income, what you would call the run-of-the-mill worker who is making the area median income wage. In Utah overall, we're above 90,000. We're number 9, I think, in the country right now, which is not something that we've been in the past. So we have great incomes, but going along with that, we have major housing problems. Does this thing have a pointer on it? Is there a laser? It does click. I want to just laser something, but all right, no lasers. Sorry, no lasers. All right, on this chart here, you're going to see why we have a housing problem right now. So in 2008, 2009, 2010, the Great Recession hits. Everybody stops building homes. We had all these crazy financing products going around. Everybody was doing interesting things, and it all blew up. And so we stopped building housing. And the United States market looks exactly the same as Utah's. We follow those national trends very, very closely. So for about 10 years, we built fewer homes than we needed. And then for a couple of years, we caught up because interest rates were low and everybody was buying and there was a frenzy and everybody's starting things, and we built a lot of apartments and we started a lot of things. And then interest rates peaked and we dropped off again. And that trough in the middle there is what has created our housing deficit that we're dealing with today, somewhere north of 40,000 units in the state of Utah. Nationwide, depending on who you listen to, there's anywhere from 2 to 7 million units short. So we have that many more households than we have places for people to live. As a result of that shortage, and as a result of the run-up in pricing that happened during the pandemic and during that extremely low interest rate time, Utah's median home price, this is now outdated. I mean, it changes daily. We're now, I think, about $550,000, $560,000 is our median home price, which is higher than Connecticut. It's crazy, right? People coming from Connecticut have to downsize to move to Utah. When did you ever think that would happen? We're somewhere between, we float between 3rd and 8th on the national just cost of housing. Our median home costs, we're between 3 and 8. For a while there, we were number 3. Now we're number 7. I think we got down to 8 or 9, and then so we float in that top tier of housing prices. California and Hawaii are always going to be the top 2, but we were number 3 for a while. We're down a little bit now, but we're in that top quartile. And this is, if there's 2 things that you need to remember out of today, for me, this is one of them. So historically, for 80 years plus, the median home price was 3 times the median wage. So if the median wage in a community was $20,000, the median home price in that community was $60,000. Median home price or median wages went up, and $50,000 was Utah for a while, and our median home price was $150,000. Over the last few years, and this is very, very recent, our median home price to median wage ratio has shifted in a way that is unprecedented in the history of our country. And this is mirrored again nationwide. Utah's on the higher end of this, but this is a nationwide phenomenon. Home prices are now roughly double what they were relative to median wages. So that means instead of having 1 income to afford the median home price, you now have to have 2. Our entire structure, everything that we did in the housing market, financing, transactions, all of that was designed around this 3-to-1 ratio. And for a long, long time, that was the case everywhere in the country. So in 1984, the first year of that chart, you see Utah's right at 3.0. 95% of the country was at 3.0 or lower. 95%. So that means only New York, Seattle, San Francisco, LA, and Honolulu. You know, there were very few places that were outside of that 3-to-1 ratio. Now it's the flipped. This is fully reversed. We now have most of the country not at 3-to-1. Only a few places are at 3-to-1 or lower. And that is having this massive impact in everything around housing. And it's leading to our kids having to live in our basements longer than we want them there. And so this is what's happening. So all of a sudden, you need 2 incomes to buy a home. And if you're a single parent, or you're just getting started and you don't have the median wage, you cannot do it. It is not possible given our current financing structure. So this is why we have to think differently. And if anybody thinks, well, we're just going to go back to 3-to-1, I'm no Nostradamus, but the reality is almost everybody in the country who studies this stuff does not believe that we're going to have a change. In order to go backwards, incomes would have to go up by 70% to go back to 2019 levels. Incomes have to go 70% or home prices have to drop 40%. And the reason incomes won't go up that fast is because that would create an inflationary spike that would just destroy most of what we love and create real other problems. And we just saw what happens when inflation is high and the chaos that it causes. So we don't really want that. And for home prices to drop, we'd have to have a shift in the supply-demand curve. Supply-demand is the rule, right? Everybody remembers this from their base economics, and everybody remembers this from first grade. When you had the good lunch, anybody remember this? When you had the good lunch, what could you trade that for? You owned the world in first grade with that good lunch, right? If you had the chips, the good chips, man, you could swap that. You'd get people promising you they'd carry you on their piggyback home every day for a month. You know, I mean, you could do anything you wanted with the great lunch. That is the law of supply and demand. Demand is high. Utah, if you think Utah's going to get any less sexy over the next 15 years, I got news for you. We're gonna look better and better and better. We're no longer the ugly duckling. We're now the beautiful swan. We were the ugly duckling for a long time. We exported our kids because we didn't have jobs. We didn't have places. And now we have the jobs. We have the economic strength. We have this diverse, incredible economy. We just got named 3 years in a row. We've been named the #1 state in the country by US News. Unprecedented. So we look good. And then what are we doing with that? We're doing stupid things like having this golf tournament where you're showing 15 million 50 to 70-year-olds with disposable income and a deep love of golf, the greatest golf course in the world, with the greens and the black rock and the red rock behind and snow canyon. I mean, that is, the announcers keep saying, it's visually stunning. It's so distracting. I'm not sure I can focus on the golf, Jim. And they're right. And so now we have all these people looking at that going, I'm going there. Honey, we're going there. And they're going to buy a house there. And they're going to discover Utah. And we got this little Olympic thing coming on, Laura just talked about. That's going to put us in the spotlight even more. And it's going to put us in a spotlight in a way that didn't even happen in 2002, because in 2002, we didn't have today's economy. 2002 launched us into the economy we have today, where companies came here because they saw what we have. We're now going to hit that next level. And so these numbers that we have on the total households that we're projected to create in the next 10 years, this is the current projection, 23.3. I think that's probably a little conservative, given what we are compared to the rest of the world. Go to San Francisco, go to Chicago, go to LA. It doesn't take a lot of people from those communities to say, I want to go to Utah, to have a big impact on our state. And so we're projected to add 23.3% increase in our households over the next 10 years. So it took us 150 years to get to where we are now. And in 10 years, we're going to add a fifth to that. That's crazy, crazy growth. And it's coming. And we can't stop it. Humanity has never been able to stop growth and progress where progress and growth want to happen. We would be the first if we were successful in that endeavor. And we're not going to be the first. It is happening. You're all witnessing it in your communities. And there are areas that are getting hit harder than others, but it's becoming something in every community across the state. So this is what's happened recently. The cost of home ownership relative to renting used to be kind of a wash. You could swap one for the other. Now you can't. Now 92% of renters in the state of Utah cannot afford a median-priced home. That's crazy. That means 8% home ownership going forward. Drop that down to like a $400,000 home, $350,000 home, you get to 20 to 25% that can afford that. We're currently a 70% home ownership state. If you change 70% to 40%, do you know what happens in 40 or 50 years? People stop working. They say, oh, good, I'm done working. I've got whatever's left of Social Security, which will be like some breadcrumbs at the porch. And they'll have whatever they've saved over the course of the year, but as costs of living have gone up, our savings have decreased, and we're not doing well in that department. The number one vehicle for creating wealth generationally in the history of our country is home ownership. And we're now riding the wave of that wealth that was created in post-World War II. We built homes that people could afford in post-World War II. Anybody here? 1,400 square foot home, 1,200 square foot home. Who grew up in something like that? Didn't have a garage, did you? The world did not end without a garage. I promise. We shared bedrooms. We had bunk beds. Remember those? We were okay. We had linoleum floors. You could drop a glass and then like catch it on the rebound coming up off the linoleum. You had the cupboards, grandma's cupboards. What did those cupboards look like? They were a slab of wood. And if they didn't have the felt and the rubber on the back of those, you'd slam those suckers and the whole house would shake. And you knew when grandma was mad because she would slam that door. And now it has to be European soft close hinges and shaker style doors. And that's the baseline. And so we've lost a lot of what got us to where we are today. And so we have to literally go back in time and start building things so that we go from 8% being able to afford a starter home to 50% being able to afford a starter home. We have to get there. If we don't, this is what happens. Housing has an impact on all of the things we care about. Home ownership is linked to all of the good things and all of the bad things. Volunteerism goes up when you have higher home ownership. Crime goes down when you have higher home ownership. Divorce goes up when you have housing instability and less home ownership. High school graduation rates go up when you have home ownership. Teen pregnancy rates go up when you don't have home ownership. Almost 4 times when you have unstable housing. Community volunteerism goes up when you have home ownership. Mental stress, mental illness, mental health issues go up when you don't have stable housing, which again, that would lead, of course, to family breakups. Homelessness tracks exactly with the price of housing. We've doubled our homelessness in Salt Lake County in the last couple of years, directly in line with the cost of living increases. These are the things that come when we don't provide that opportunity to the people of our state, to our kids and grandkids. And that's the message that has to become the mantra for everybody that's talking about housing. We're not going to sell smaller houses and missing middle and all of that on the basis of, hey, if we do this, we can provide more homes for people from Chicago. Don't use that as your message. Or California. Especially don't use that message. I am a recovering Californian, among other things. But that's not the message. The message is our kids and grandkids need to be able to choose to stay here. That's the message. And we have to repeat that over and over and over again. When you're talking to your coworkers, when you're talking to elected officials, when you're talking to constituents, people in the community, it's for our kids and grandkids. If we don't do that, we have this. We have the downsides of this. When we do, we have the upsides of this. This is one other thing, just touch on this really quickly, and then we'll go to the final slide. We'll go back to Laura and her brilliance. One thing that's happening in addition to our population growth is our household size is shrinking. So back in the day, everybody knew people with like 5 or 6 kids, 7 kids, 8 kids in Utah, right? You grew up in Utah, you knew those families, right? Everybody had, if you had like 4 kids, it was almost like you weren't trying. Like, come on, people, get busy. I mean, like 4, that's it? What are you doing? Now 4 kids is a pretty big family. We've changed our, again, right in line with the country. We've gone from over 4 per household to now we're right at 3. And so what does that mean? If you have the exact same population and you go from 4 people per household to 3 people per household, you now have a massive increase in the number of houses you have just for that same population. So this is going on at the same time our population is increasing. So when people talk about, oh, well, there's going to be a baby boomer, die off, and we're going to have this silver tsunami of people leaving homes, at the same time we're shrinking household sizes. So that phenomenon is not going to have as great of impact as it might otherwise have. And then finally, this is the 2 slides. One is the 6-to-1. We've doubled our cost of housing relative to incomes. The other one is, this is why it works. This is 2022 numbers, and this ratio, so the median wealth of a renter, $10,000. In the United States, this is a whole country. The median wealth of a homeowner in the United States, almost $400,000. 40-to-1. That ratio stayed the same if you go back in time. It used to be 200,000 to 5,000. So this is a ratio that is kind of one of those laws of nature, I guess, that home ownership produces wealth, produces generational wealth. And that generational wealth produces all of the outcomes that we want to see in our communities. And so we are focused very intently on starter homes and on home ownership in all of the tools we're creating at the state level. And we're creating some new tools that will be helpful in this process. But that is the reason why. We had a Weber County, if we have anybody from Weber County here. Do we have anybody from Weber? There's our Weber people. Excellent. We did an amazing thing in Weber County. There was an existing 725-unit development. The developer, Nilsen Homes, came in and said, hey, we want to do some starter homes. This was an existing development agreement. And they said, we want to add more density to this project. And of course, the planning commission was like, oh, no, you don't. And the commissioners were like, oh, yeah, you want to just get me hung right now? Why don't I just go out and hang myself so I'd save the people the trouble? But we worked through it. And we created 275 starter homes within that same project, mixed in, single-family detached starter homes. And there's some amazing slides on that they've done. They've done the first 12. They offered them first to public workers, first responders, and military and veterans. And they now have a waiting list of, I can't remember, 250 people for these houses. So we added 275 starter homes to that 725 development, and it's now 1,000 units. And the clincher of that was talking to the commissioners and saying, at what point in your career do you have the opportunity, with the stroke of a pen, to create over $100 million of wealth in your community by adding these 275 starter homes? That's a real number. 275 times 400,000. Do the math. 275 homes created $100 million of generational wealth in the people Not in the developers, not in the builders, not in all the other things, but with the people who are living and working in that community. So now multiply that. We do 1,000 homes. What's that impact? $400 million. We do 10,000 homes. $4 billion of wealth that we've created in the state of Utah in the hands of the people who will use it and prosper because of it. That is the message. This is the future of our country and our state and our society. It's all based on this structure. And if we lose that, we have major issues coming forward. And I'll be happily dead in 40 or 50 years when all those chickens come home to roost, because it will not be pretty. So our kids and grandkids need us to deliver. If you talk to any of them, ask them what their thoughts are and whether or not they're going to be able to own a home. Most of them will say, I have no hope of ever owning a home. So we have to do this. This is who we are. We believe in delivering things for future generations better than we have them today, and we're at risk of not being able to do that. We'll go back to Laura.
All right, Steve does such an amazing job always helping. Hey, stay up here. Don't go away. Sit down. Steve does such a great job helping illustrate the why this is so important and why we're so focused on it as a state. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about just the process that we're working through and how you all can get involved. Steve just elaborated on why this is important, so we don't need to go into more detail on that. So we have broken up the development of the Housing Strategic Plan into 2 phases. The first phase is complete, and this report is out. You can read it by scanning the QR code. We really focused in this first phase on all the things that we can agree on. As you can imagine, we've got, we have local governments, we have builders, we have housing advocate folks, we have legislators, we have lots of different viewpoints on housing. And so first we thought, let's focus on all the things that we can agree on. So we came up with a series of goals. We came up with some guiding principles. We established a framework of how we're going to approach this topic together. And then we did a giant inventory. We looked at all of the various different housing structures and programs and funding tools that we have available to us. We looked at, did a big literature review and collected over 200 different tactics that we could employ and just started kind of collecting information. Phase 2 is where we start really getting into the recommendations. So this is the phase that we're working on now. There was an audit that was completed by the Office of the Legislative Auditor General that had a bunch of recommendations on housing. And so we're going to crosswalk the audit with the plan so that you can see how their recommendations have been addressed. We are working on collecting and assigning some assignments on who's going to collect data and report on specific housing metrics. We're going to propose some alignments and refocusing of housing structures, and then focus on tactics and ongoing organization. So here's the kind of timeline. As I mentioned, the first phase is out now. Our final plan is due by state statute at the end of this calendar year. We do have a public comment period that is planned, and so everyone can weigh in at that time, but also there's opportunities before that. So just a quick recap of what we have produced so far. We have 3 goals. We have improving housing availability, affordability, and stability, for fostering community well-being and quality of life. And goal 3 is to seek consensus and evidence-based policy and housing support solutions. And then we have a series of guiding principles here. Prioritizing collaboration over preemption, promoting a holistic and regional approach, and I won't read all of these, but cross-issue alignment, thinking about rural context versus urban context, that there's no one-size-fits-all, and thinking about how we can support centered-based development and a variety of things like that. So right now we are working with a series of working groups. We have 5 working groups, and there is a meeting actually this afternoon that I'll be slipping out to a quiet corner of the conference center to facilitate. And you can see the topics that each working group is focused on. And they kind of are broken up by AMI category for the first part. So working group 1 is their very, very lowest income. Working group 2 is where we have some subsidy, these are our affordable housing options where there is some public support needed. Working group 3 is market rate. Working group 4 is focused on rural and community and resort communities. And then working group 5 focused on infrastructure, housing locations, and then where we might need some statewide standards. And we also are working on some metrics. So in phase 1, we developed a list of lead metrics. These are just a couple of examples of types of things we'll be tracking: number of new starter homes delivered, number of new units in the 30 to 60% AMI, total number of new housing units entitled but limited by infrastructure deficiencies. We don't currently have a great data source for that one, but we're hoping to develop that, and number of new units within centers. So all of this will be displayed on a new housing metric dashboard, a housing dashboard. You'll be able to find this on the governor's website. You can click on each of these different metrics. It will pull up a map so you can see statewide data. You can see it by county, a description of what the data is representing, why it matters, and then our sources. And then we will be proposing a list of tactics. And so these tactics, these are things that we could do to help move us towards the goals that Steve was just describing. These could be policy changes, they could be strategic investments, they could be an education or outreach initiative, or some sort of data collection or transparency tool. And we'll present them in some sort of graphic kind of like this. Just a handful of possible tactics. Again, I'm going to emphasize that these tactics have not been vetted. These are a product of a giant literature review. They come from lots of different places. We are currently working through them. We're revising them. We're adding to them. We're subtracting. But this is a handful of some of the types of things that are being considered. Pre-approved ADU designs, revising building codes to eliminate unnecessary barriers, allow multifamily in more zoning districts, expanding housing options, a variety of different things. And they go from really high level to very kind of nitty gritty. Parking, more funding sources, capping maximum home size relative to lot size. That's one thing we've heard from local governments a lot is, yeah, we can make the lots smaller, but a developer's just going to put an enormous house on this small lot, and that's not necessarily solving our problem. So that's an idea that's being considered. APA will be convening some working groups. We reached out to the chapter and said, hey, we want the advice and collective wisdom of all of you who are doing this work on the ground every day. And so there will be some working groups. If you're interested in helping to review some of these tactics and provide feedback, reach out to Zach Smallwood or any member of APA's leadership, and we'll get you engaged in the process. And so with that, I think, do we have a little time for Q&A? This is why I wanted Steve to stay up here. Okay, yeah, questions? Frank.
I don't purport to speak on behalf of the entire planning community on this question, but one of the things that I've experienced in the last year and a half after the state announced a series of housing incentives, including the HOPS, the FIZ, the treasurer's kind of funding source for affordable housing that's tied to the housing cost, is that just so you know, right? Every developer in Mill Creek wants an upzone, right? And every time they come in, I know. And every time they come in and talk to me about it, I present the menu, right? And I actually say, our council, I go so far to say that, of course it's context sensitive, but if it makes sense in the general plan, and it usually does, I could say, we can even give you a little bit of a density bonus if you do these things. I've yet to have a developer take us up on that. And I think that's partly because in Mill Creek, land values are too high. These are really, really good ideas, but I've kind of come to the conclusion, and other people may have a different idea, but I've kind of come to the conclusion that the best lever that the city has is kind of a scary one, and that is to actually buy property, write down the cost of development, and then sell it for affordable housing. And that's what Mill Creek's thinking of doing, right? We're thinking of using our CRA resources to do that, but not every city has that. And it's just, to me, it's striking. I just share that as kind of an illustration of how bad the housing situation is in Mill Creek. I don't think the incentives are working. We just wrote a whole chapter on affordable housing incentives that's very similar to Salt Lake's. I hope it'll work. I'm concerned that it won't.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. Yeah, clap for that. That was good. Yeah, well, you're exactly right. I mean, everything comes back to land. It's the supply and demand. We used to be able to build our way out, and we had places to go, and we no longer have places to go. Now we're squeezing down South Utah County, west across the lake, north, not quite as much, but land has become the great constraint in this discussion. One of the things that we did do, and this is step one, is permitting UDOT properties to be used for the new condo initiative. And those would be priced at the dirt price. So it's essentially subsidized, not as the entitled price, but as the dirt price. And that subsidy will go through to the end user, the end purchaser of those condos. That's the kind of thing that we really are faced with if we're going to provide starter housing in our developed areas. What I would love to have this group engage with us on is that review where we're creating a map of all public parcels. And not all public parcels are created equally, but there are a lot that are just dirt. And they're dirt because they've been sitting for a long time, because different agencies own them and different entities own them. And the job of government is not typically to dispose of land. You acquire it because you need it for something, and then plans change. And then all of a sudden now we've got this piece of dirt we're just going to sit and it's out of sight, out of mind. And we end up inadvertently land banking a lot of property. And so we are at the point now where we have to inventory that land and force our government entities from the state, federal, down to local to tell us why they need that property. And if they don't, then now there's that opportunity. And that applies to school districts and universities and cities and counties and water districts and DNR, ag and DNR. And I mean, we have a lot of public land. 10% of the state is public land. And 60% is federal land. That's a whole nother discussion. Representative Malloy just put something in the reconciliation bill a couple days ago about selling land to the state at fair market value. That's good, but it's not going to help the affordability issue because land is going to be sold at the market rate, and so then you're going to go into market rate plus housing, and those tools aren't going to be as effective on that. But great point. We need your help on that because that is one of the critical issues.
Let's go here, John.
I was just going to yell. I may have missed this, but how are we meshing this with the moderate income housing plan stuff? Or maybe you didn't want to talk about that.
No. It's a great question, and the idea is that this structure will replace the moderate income housing plan. And I'm sure you guys are all there's a collective, we love that thing. We love those reports. No, you can keep doing them. So we're not going to stop you from doing them. But the idea is that this set of tactics will replace kind of that menu selection piece where you're struggling to figure out where it is you fit in and create a lot more direct accountability than the moderate income housing plan. It was a great idea. It was a good start on this process, but I think the intent is to grow out of that. Laura?
I'll just note the tactics, we're going to be sorting the tactics based on who's the appropriate entity and level of government to implement those. And so some of them will be implemented by the state. They might be legislative policy, but a lot of them will be things that are, they need to be implemented at the local level. And so, yeah, great question. And at 5 minutes, is that what you said? Okay. Thanks, John.
I just have a question. So there's a lot of communities that have older housing, great old bungalows like the ones you were talking about, but there isn't any incentives or programs for people to buy those. All of the ones coming out of the state legislature apply to new housing. Is there anything, because it also helps with community revitalization, the whole bit. And so it would just be nice to see if we could get something that would assist that.
Thanks, Carla. I'll take a stab at it, and then I'll let Steve. Yeah, thank you. We've got the first-time homebuyer program that applies only to new construction. The economists in our office will say that giving people more resources to buy an increasingly expensive product is just like climbing a ladder that you never get to the top, right? The real root of the issue is that we need more houses to bring that, the supply in closer alignment with the demand. And so, yes, we do need to be able to help people get into homes, and some people need a leg up to do that. And the first-time home buyer program, we have talked about expanding that to existing housing stock, but it's really not getting to the root of the issue. The root of the issue is that we just don't have enough homes to meet the demand, and that's creating that imbalance.
Yeah, and so this is a really good point. This came back, the first year, first legislative session after 2024, a lot of cities came to me and said, we're dying. We're closing schools. We're losing families. Churches are closing. We're shuttering all kinds of things, and our communities are wilting. I was just in Cleveland on Monday, and they have, if you look at a map of Cleveland and look at the tax foreclosure owned parcels by the city of Cleveland or by their land trust, it's like a quarter of the city. It's incredible. That's what happens if you ignore legacy areas and legacy cities. So this session, we did make available $20 million as a revolving loan fund for, we're starting with Salt Lake and Ogden because they have existing programs, but the hope is that that revolving loan fund allows cities to purchase homes that are in some state of disrepair, use grant funding to improve those homes, and then convert them into home ownership, so reclaiming those properties. Ogden's been doing it for a lot of years, and they do 3 or 4 a year. The goal is to get them up to 30 to 40 this next couple of years, and then eventually up to 60 to 80 in a couple of years. And so creating structures around that where we can regionalize that and give you the opportunity to plug into that capital stack and be able to do that is one of the goals that we're working on. And then I just spoke with Senate leadership yesterday, and they're working on another program to create opportunities for existing homes within our legacy areas, because that is critical. We can't ignore that. And we're, you think about what we're doing, right? We're closing schools, and then we're rebuilding schools somewhere else at like 5 times the cost. And so the economic inefficiency of what we're doing is pretty apparent. And so that's a really good comment, and we have to focus more on that. There's a lot of things, but that is one of the top things that we're working on.
I think our last question goes to Dr. Parker.
Thank you very much, Laura and Steve. Thank you very much for your presentation. You've laid out a very ambitious plan for the state, and we're in a room full of planners, and I think you're going to need our help to advance the interests of the state. Yet we see the state challenging tertiary education. And I'm worried about the future of planners in this state being educated to the level we need to address these issues going forward, because they're not going to solve themselves overnight. We're going to have a long-term commitment. And yet we see the state legislature challenging universities about their low-performing programs. And I worry that planning will maybe fall into that group of low-performing programs and be abandoned in many of our institutions. I see the capital, the human capital of the state being intricately tied to this advancing the interests of the state. And I hope the state looks at that and considers that, particularly in the legislature, when we're sort of motivated to sort of cut things, yet we have an ambitious plan to achieve things. So I hope we can balance that out in some way. That's a comment, it's not a question, I don't think.
Well, thank you, Bruce. You know, on the executive branch side, we take no responsibility for what the legislature does. Steve is a recovering legislator, so we'll give him a pass. Yeah, it's a challenge, right? And there seems to be a little bit of cognitive dissonance there, and we have this challenge in lots of spaces. We're talking about expanding our energy production, yet we're cutting, energy engineering programs as well. One big challenge that we found in housing is that we need carpenters, we need electricians, we need roofers, especially in the rural parts of the state. Available contractors that are skilled is one of the big barriers. And so, yeah, workforce development is an important thing, and we will carry that message forward. Thanks.
Yeah, I told you I was recovering from a lot of things. Legislature is one of them. And I wore these socks today to illustrate this really critical point that if Tupac and Biggie can exist on my feet in unison, that the legislature and the executive branch and the local governments, we can all do it together. But your point is well taken. It's critical that we think ahead and not be so reactive. And that's really what our job is. I mean, that's your job, that's our job, is to take the emotion out of some of those conversations, engage it, allow the fear to sort of be its thing, and then walk past it and say, okay, now that we've got that out of the way, what are we really trying to achieve? So thank you for that comment.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you so much, Steve and Laura. We always appreciate hearing from you.